Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where people often get exactly what they ask for, and not in a good way. My friends, I hope you're having another lovely day today, and the stories in this one are super satisfying, so sit back, kick your feet up, and enjoy the ride. Oh, and do remember to hit that subscribe button for future tales. So, before we begin, I just want to clarify a few things. This took place in Europe. I was a salaried employee working 40 hours a week. I left that job about 10 months after the event took place. I didn't get in trouble and nobody tried to fire me. So about 4 years back, I started a new banking job. All was well, just that management was pretty strict with timekeeping, which was weird since we were in the back office. But rules are rules, so I followed them. Anyways, about 4 months in, I start to realize that my senior manager did not like me. Now, I'm a pretty assertive person, and I do know how to stand up for myself, and he hated it. I would speak up during meetings, ask questions, give suggestions, and so on and so forth, while the team would stay quiet. The week everything went south, I was working overtime, which was obviously unpaid. On Thursday, I did nearly 2 hours of overtime. On Friday, I thought I'd leave a few minutes early as I was done for the week. My manager was off, so I left 10 minutes early. So on Monday, I come into work and get called into a meeting right away. There were 3 of us in the room, myself, my manager, and my senior manager. The conversation goes as followed. My manager said, "So, I heard you left work early on Friday." I told him I did. I left 10 minutes early. The manager said, "Did you ask for permission to leave early?" I told him it was 10 minutes. I did 4 hours of overtime last week. Why are we having this conversation? The senior manager then tells me, "Because you left early without asking for permission." I then asked him, "Is this a joke?" He said, "Your working hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., not 9 a.m. to 5:50 p.m. You are not allowed to leave early without asking for your manager or my permission first. Is that clear?" I told him, "Got it. It's perfectly clear." So I listened and started to come in the office at 9 a.m. and leaving at 6 p.m. on the dot. At first, they didn't realize what was happening, but the week after the meeting was the last week of the month. And let's just say the last week of the month was pretty intense, especially the final day. On the final day of the month, reports had to be completed, signed off, and submitted before the month's end. We covered multiple jurisdictions, and we would deal with Asia in the morning and America in the evening. Our team was expected to work overtime due to this. So here comes Friday, the last day of the month. It's showtime. So I'm at my desk at 9 a.m. sharp. Most of the team have already been at the office for at least an hour. I, of course, have my cup of coffee from the cafeteria because I was a bit early. My manager looks at me and raises his eyebrow but doesn't say anything. So I do my work, and at break time, I'm the only person to go on my break. Lunchtime, everybody was eating at their desk while I go meet my friends for lunch. On the second break, I once again leave my workplace to go for a short stroll around. So back to work. About 5:45 p.m., I get a call from one of the senior managers in the US. She needs the report amended. Now, there were 4 of us on that call. I'm doing the amendments as we speak and closely monitoring the time. I see that it's 2 minutes to 6 p.m., and then 1 minute, and then it's 6 p.m. The senior manager is rambling about the reports when I interrupt and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I have to stop you right there." Senior manager says, "Yes." I tell her, "Oh, so it's 6 p.m. here. My day is officially over. I have to go." At this point, she's confused and says, "Huh?" So I tell her, as per my management, my working hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., so I must leave right now. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up on Monday. So I then log off, get my coat, and wished everybody a great weekend, and I left. It was about 6:04 p.m. Both my manager and my senior manager were dumbfounded by what happened. They were looking pale and stared at me in disbelief. It was a glorious sight. I wanted to apologize to my senior manager that I wasn't able to leave at 6 p.m. on the dot, but I thought that would have been way too passive-aggressive, so I just left. So I did relax the rule a bit after a few months, yet I never did more than 30 minutes of overtime. Ironically, once my stakeholders understood that I will not be available for 10 plus hours, they start collaborating earlier in the month. I would have most of my reports done and submitted by the last day of the month. Now, I love how senior management couldn't do a damn thing about OP leaving at 6. Like, I'd understand them being upset if OP took 2 hours off early to make up for staying 2 hours late, but 10 minutes? Like, I definitely power tripped a little bit too hard. Do you know that guy at work that everybody hates? The rude, obnoxious, lazy one that nobody quite understands how he still has a job? Well, my coworker's name was Bob. For months, Bob partnered himself up with me with a lovely 90-10 split of the work. So anytime I called him out on it, he got more and more obnoxious, and if it was actually possible, he did less and less work. Now, on top of all of his other charming traits, Bob is an absolute phone addict. Now, this is bad enough in a regular setting, but where we work, it's actually very, very dangerous to not be paying attention to what's going on around you. I've mentioned this to Bob repeatedly to no avail, even after he was nearly hit by a forklift and almost had his head smacked by a robot. Our manager at the time said, "If you're stupid enough to die because you won't put your phone down, no one's gonna miss you," and he ignored the behavior. My last straw at even attempting to get this guy to work and be safe was him snapping off and saying, "Leave me alone about my phone." Well, we just got a new manager, partially because of our old manager's attitude towards safety issues and partly because of his poor performance. The new manager had a quick to-the-point meeting at the beginning of our shift and stated very clearly, "If I see you on your phone, you're fired. No excuses, no exceptions." Now, Bob missed this meeting because he was running late again. So about 2 hours later, I see the new manager walking to our area. Bob, as usual, was head down staring at his phone. Remember when he specifically said to leave him alone about his phone? Well, that's exactly what I did. Our new boss wound up standing behind him for a solid 3 minutes before Bob even noticed he was there. Bob was promptly escorted to HR, and I was apologized to by the new manager because I'd have to run the work area solo until a replacement was found, which was no big loss. The extra 10% is well worth knowing that that guy won't be around anymore. I guess no one at the job will bother him about his damn phone again. You know what, it was probably best that Bob was let go, and same with the old manager. Definitely better than the alternative. I mean, come on, the guy was literally almost killed by a forklift, and all the boss said was, "If you're stupid enough to die, no one's gonna miss you." Like, that's a great attitude from a boss who should be enforcing safety at work. So, to set the stage, I was working as a UPS delivery guy as a holiday helper. Now, as a holiday helper, they had us wear cheap brown vests with a small company logo on them. You'd think that'd be enough, but apparently not. Now, although we mainly dropped packages off at people's houses, we also went through a shopping plaza to drop off stuff at different stores. We were dropping stuff off at a Kroger when this happened. So the way it worked is I would take a cart loaded with packages into Kroger, along with a machine, which was basically a scanner that we used to log in packages and mark off deliveries. I usually did this delivery alone because it was simple and my driver could use the time to organize other stuff. So I go off into the store with a decent amount of packages stacked up on the trolley, where I roll them over to customer service. Now usually there's someone behind the desk when I come in, but sometimes the employee's out on the floor helping someone find something, like they were today. So standard practice is for me to unload all the boxes behind the counter and just wait until an employee comes back to sign off on them. So I unload all the boxes, stack them behind the counter, and then lean up against the wall to wait for someone to come by. While I'm waiting, I casually take out my phone and begin browsing Reddit to pass the time. And then I heard, ahem. So I look up to see a 50-something-year-old lady scowling at me with a cart packed to the brim with food. The woman had a Karen haircut, and she was wearing a pink Nike top, blue leggings, and about 2 metric tons of attitude. So we stared at each other and her expression soured with each passing moment. Finally, she broke the awkward silence and she said, "Well?" Now at this I shrugged and said, "Well, what?" She then shoves her cart forward, almost bumping me with it, and she said, "Are you gonna keep ignoring me, or are you gonna check me out?" So I then look at her and then down at my uniform, which consisted of a gray hoodie, black sweatpants, and my trademark brown vest. Kroger employees wear black khakis, blue collared shirts, and no brown vest. Now at this point I look back up at her, trying to remain polite, and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but I don't work here, I'm just dropping off packages." Now the Karen then scoffed and she jabbed a finger at my scanner and said, "Liar, you're just too lazy to help me, start scanning these." She then shoved the cart at me again, this time bumping my thigh, and she said, "Or I will get your manager." Now, I wasn't sure why she didn't go to the standard checkout line either, but I guess if things got really busy, Kroger allowed customers to go through the customer service desk. Now, I could have taken the easy way out. I could have told her to politely get lost and left, but then she took out her phone to make a call, and she snapped her fingers at me, mouthing, "Come on, I have to be somewhere." So at this point, I decided to help her out and began to unload her groceries, one by one, in the most tedious manner possible. I then pretend to scan each fruit, can, veggie, and box with my scanner, which is normally used for recording people's addresses. Funnily enough, it didn't know where the kiwi or rotisserie chicken live, but it does make a satisfying little beep when it rejects an address, which sounded quite similar to the product being scanned. Now, I kept doing this for about 15 minutes, often misscanning something or inspecting it, much to the woman's annoyance. From time to time, I'd interrupt her phone call to ask her a ridiculous question such as, "Would you like to add another grape to this bunch? There's one here with a brown spot." She would usually answer with a huffy, "What?" and stare into space as she slowly worked through the question, and then shake her head sharply as she went back to her conversation. Now, the woman then reaches her breaking point when I asked as to whether or not she wanted her eggs bagged individually or all together. She said, "What? Why in the world would you... What? What kind of question is that?" Now, I stood there with my scanner in one hand, egg crate in the other, looking completely innocent while trying not to die laughing. I could swear I heard her mind briefly shutting down at the stupidity of my question before rebooting. So calmly, with a polite smile, I repeat the question. Her face was almost as purple as the grapes I'd offered a discount as she struggled to form words and said, "What? What kind of stupid question is that?" I placed the eggs back in the bag while nodding sympathetically and said, "The kind of question I ask someone who won't believe that I don't work here." Now by this point, the Kroger employee working the customer service desk has returned, and the lady turns on them with the fury of God and said, "How can you let an employee treat me like this? I shop here all the time. How dare you treat a valued customer like crap?" Now, to their credit, the customer service worker did take the verbal assault pretty well, holding their hands up in a holy cow gesture as they tried to calm the lady down. They then looked from her to me and then back to her and simply said what I said, which was, "Ma'am, he doesn't work here." Now, she then pursed her lips at the employee's words and looked down at my brown vest, as if thinking I was somehow still defying her logic. She then says, "Well, you just lost a customer." Then as quick as she arrived, the Karen turned on her heel with a flip of her gray attitude due and stormed off. I was tempted to say that was more of a win, but I figured I'd antagonize her enough. Holding out my dyad for a signature, I asked the employee if he had ever come across her before. He said he had, but never that angry. She was usually just demanding and arrogant to anybody else when she shopped there. Once everything was settled, I returned to the van. The whole ordeal lasted about 15 to 20 minutes. Guys, so this was a cross post from r/I don't work here lady, but it was such a sweet malicious compliance on that entitled woman. The fact that OP wasted 20 minutes of her time when she demanded he scan her groceries with his package scanner is absolutely hilarious, guys. I also find it so funny how she saw herself as a valued customer when the employee basically told OP that she was the worst person ever. Some people, right? Okay, so this story happened on my bachelor's party about 3 years back. I took my guys on a 3-week-long canoeing and camping trip. My father volunteered to haul our canoes behind his new Ford Expedition. He even got a canoe trailer for the event. So before leaving, we checked the local laws of the destination. The destination had a law that everything towed cannot be 4 foot past the rearmost support, without displaying a red marker, such as a flag. Before leaving, my father made absolutely sure that all the canoes were within that 4-foot mark. He then tied a nice red bandana on the back of the longest canoe, which happened to have a metal bow and loop, which was perfect to tie the flag on. Now this is the compliance part, not malicious in intent, but will come to be in consequence. The camping trip went well. On the way back, my mom was following behind us in her own sedan, carrying extra groomsmen from the trip. My parents had volunteered to drive them back after their car broke down on the way up. In a day-long drive home, we hit a semi-major city in rush hour. As we were driving the main route, crossing an intersection, an impatient driver cuts between my mom and dad, pulling between the Expedition with the canoe trailer and my mom's car with no room to spare. Traffic suddenly stopped and my dad had to slow down to stop quickly. The Jeep drove straight into the canoe trailer. Now, the longest canoe was upside down on the trailer and had a metal bow. The Jeep was an SUV, and she drove into the one lower canoe with her bumper, and into the longer canoe with her hood. So we felt a bump, and then another bump. She had backed up and out from under the canoes. Her bumper was impaled on the lower canoe, and her hood drove under the metal bow of the upper canoe. When she reversed, she effectively peeled her hood like a tin can opener. My dad and the woman driving the Jeep got out of their SUVs. She was a mid-50s woman from New Jersey, with a let me see your manager haircut, and she was in a rush to get home immediately. She commented how she owned a vacation home in the area and how he damaged her brand new Jeep before citing local laws and said that he needed a red flag which he didn't have. Now it had blown off on the many-hour highway trip. So my father then commented that he's carrying many big red canoes home and that she was such an impatient driver that she cut my mom off who was following him before plowing into the big red canoes. The Jeep lady then commented that it was probably a scheme for both my mom and dad to try to trick people into getting between them before stopping and forcing others to hit them for insurance money. She then threatened to sue them for damages to her SUV, in addition to distress and one or two other things I can't remember. She then demanded the police come immediately to her aid to note the details for her upcoming lawsuit. My dad told her that he already called the cops, and she replied, "Good." Just then, a police cruiser pulls up and had to block rush hour traffic. A mid-20-something cop gets out, and the Jeep lady immediately was all over him about this alleged entrapment scheme, forcing her to drive into a trailer with giant red canoes. She quotes the local law and forces the officer to get out a tape measure to check the 4-foot rule. The police officer, obviously annoyed at this woman who rear-ended a trailer and claiming to be the victim, says that my father is within code. She then screams at him, "No he's not, measure again." So he does so. He then calls her over to show that the canoe is indeed just within the 4-foot rule and does not require a red marker flag. She then says, "Well, check his brake lights, I didn't see any." The officer then quotes the local law, saying that brake lights must be visible at standing height at a certain distance. He then proceeds to use the measuring tape she forced him to bring out to measure that exact distance. He then stood there and told my dad to go hit the brake pedal. My father does so, and both trailer brake lights engage. The officer then comments, "He's legal." And the woman berates him that he's wrong and says, "Well, I couldn't see those taillights. I was much closer than that." The officer then smirked and said, "Do you think that may have been the problem, ma'am?" So long story short, he writes a police report to state how my father was in every inch of the local laws, and that not only did this woman rear-end him, but she must have been extraordinarily inept to rear-end a trailer full of giant 18-foot red canoes. My father ended up being awarded the cost of 2 new canoes and a new trailer from her insurance agency, who found her to be 100% at fault. I feel like she knew a little bit too much about the 4-foot rule and was a little too quick to scream lawsuit. Like, maybe she was the one who was scheming something in this. So when I was 15 years old, I started working for a particular clown who owns a fast food restaurant. When I first started working, the manager assumed I was 16 years old, and I was given a red polo shirt to wear during my shifts. There was a hierarchy to the shirts at this restaurant. White was for anyone 15 and younger, and you got a red shirt once you were 16 or over. Black shirts were for crew trainers, and full button-down shirts were for managers. All the shirts were made of decent fabric except for the white shirt, which was very thin and practically see-through. So about a month after I started working there, the manager calls me into her office and asked why I lied about my age. I told her I had never once said to her that I was only 15, so I never really lied about it. She told me I had to hand in my red shirt and exchange it for a white one, which I did. I wore the white one for about a week, and that's when I noticed that the first wash, the fabric became even thinner, and the shirt was practically see-through. Now, as a heavy-set individual, if I wasn't wearing an undershirt, you would have seen all of my hairy, manly glory underneath this sorry excuse for a shirt. So I then asked if I could get my old red shirt back. I was told it was company policy to follow the shirt rules, and I was denied my old red shirt. So cue the malicious compliance. There was a rule stating that I had to wear my see-through company-issued shirt for all of my shifts, and there was no rule stating what I had to wear underneath. My dad had recently returned from Mexico and had bought me the most touristy shirt from his trip. There were 4 panels on the shirt. The first had a worm and a shot that said 1 tequila. The second had the same worm, second shot, much drunker, and said 2 tequila. The third, the same worm, third shot, very drunk, and said 3 tequila. As I'm sure you'd have deduced, the fourth is a worm passed out on the floor, and it says floor. I decided this was the perfect undershirt for a 15-year-old register worker at the Clown to wear underneath his see-through shirt. I wore it for 1 shift before the manager came up to me. She told me how much she didn't appreciate the fact that I wore such a vulgar shirt underneath my work uniform. I politely told her that nobody would know what I was wearing underneath my company-issued work shirt if they weren't see-through. I then went to clock out that day and had a brand new unused red polo shirt just waiting for me. I was told to wear the red shirt from that point forward and to turn in my white shirts. My friends, now this is a great malicious compliance, guys. Nobody was hurt, no harm was done, and a great point was made. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, if you enjoyed the stories today, do hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, an entitled Karen calls 911 because she watched a terrible movie at a theater. Guys, check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.